I'm an American who's been traveling the world and living abroad for nearly 2 years. And of those nearly 2 years, I spent 14 months living in the Netherlands. And of all the places I've been, don't tell any of the other countries I said this, the Netherlands has been by far my favorite country. Bearing that in mind, in this video, I will be reacting to videos of other Americans as they travel through the Netherlands. So without further ado, let's get into the videos.
3 things that I like about living in the Netherlands as an American. Number 1 is going to be how strict the schools are here. You have to go through several steps to take your kid out of school to go on vacation. You can't miss school here or else you're going to get fined. Number 2, not losing cell service. I'm pretty sure you can go anywhere in this country and not lose cell service. Out there in the hills of Oregon, I should say the mountains, you lose service. It actually sucks. Number 3 are the 2-day holidays. Not only do you get one Christmas, one Easter, one Pinksterdag, you get 2. You celebrate 2 days for all of them. There might be more, I'm not sure yet. It's great.
We found an apartment and it still doesn't even feel real to say it, mostly because of how fast it all happened, so I'm gonna fill you in real quick. So we actually toured this place about 3 weeks ago and we were number 4 in line out of 6 people. The person in first said yes, of course, because it's a beautiful apartment and why would you not? That meant we had to leave heartbroken because we really could picture ourselves living here and we could not get it off of our minds for some reason. Fast forward to last week, we get a random call from the realtor saying that something had fallen through with them and asking if we were still interested. Here's some live footage of that phone call. We were in absolute shock. We obviously know the horror story that is the housing market here in the Netherlands, so we had fully expected this process to take months. We also thought that we were probably just gonna have to settle on a small rental apartment, and we had actually checked out a few studios. So just the fact that we found this place within 3 months of searching, and it's so much bigger than what we figured we would end up in. It has a separate bedroom and a pretty spacious kitchen with a balcony, and the best part is we are like 5 minutes from the beach. Oh my god. And yeah, we're so excited to show you guys everything that we have planned for the space, and I really just can't wait to make it our little home.
Things I find really strange as an American that's been living in the Netherlands for 3 months. Okay, starting off strong, they all love French fries, which, don't get me wrong, they're good, but they're so incredibly mid, and they have shops just dedicated to French fries, when you could just like go to McDonald's and get some or anywhere else. Which leads me into my next thing, McDonald's. They love McDonald's. And I'm not saying that like Americans don't, but they love dining in at McDonald's. Everyone is just sitting in. Like you can't find a seat if you even wanted one. It's insane. Also another thing, nobody here is awake earlier than 8 a.m. Like, period. You can barely find a gym that opens at 6 a.m. and on the weekends, good luck. Earliest you're gonna find a 7 a.m. opening. They also just love having bread and just plain cheese, and they call that breakfast. Or bread, butter, and sprinkles for breakfast. So strange.
All right, so we have a lot to talk about from those videos. Now, if you see me looking off to the side, it's because I took some notes as I was watching those videos because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything, starting with the strict schooling. So this is something I didn't really know about. Apparently, it's really difficult to take your kid out of school in the Netherlands, which is interesting because I feel like the general security protocol at Dutch schools seems to be a lot more lenient from the outside looking in, where not only do a lot of the schools, especially in the more suburban areas, not even have fences around them, but they have open door policies where you can literally just walk in. So I guess it does kind of make sense to counteract that with having a strict policy for pulling your kids out of school. But as far as the fines go, I don't know if they do that in the US. I did miss a lot of school one year growing up. I had a lot of stomach issues that year, and I think, go and see the doctor at least once during that time. But I don't recall my parents ever getting fined. The only thing I remember was that I was threatened with summer school if I had missed 1 or 2 more days. And rest assured, I thugged it out for those last couple of days of school. But if you know more about that, then please enlighten me in the comments. Now, the next thing that stood out to me was the reliable cell service. Now, I think this makes a lot of sense because not only is the Netherlands a very small country by land area, but it's also a very flat country. I found that, at least throughout my travels, generally when you're up in the mountains, to that guy's point, you will have worse cell reception. I don't really know logistically why that's the case, but it makes sense in my head, at least, that that would be the case in most places. So maybe if you go to Switzerland or something like that, you might have slightly worse cell reception. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments. But I feel like also infrastructure in general tends to be very good in the Netherlands. I never really saw any component of Dutch infrastructure that seemed to be lacking, literally at all. And this is not me just trying to gas up the Netherlands. I don't even live in the Netherlands anymore. I'm filming this video from Vietnam, but there's a reason why my girlfriend and I plan to settle down in the Netherlands in the future. It's because the country operates very well, and evidently cell service is no exception to that rule. Now, the next thing that stood out to me in that second video was the person said that the streets were too narrow. Now, a part of me wants to believe that that was just rage bait and that they were just trying to evoke a negative reaction out of people by saying that. But then at the same time, I can see how an American who has never watched Not Just Bikes and isn't really privy to how that kind of urban planning benefits the society as a whole would be a little off-put by that kind of infrastructure, the pedestrian and cyclist-centric infrastructure. But in case that person just so happens to be watching this video, let me just enlighten you really quickly. In the US, you need a car. The reason why you need a car is because everything is bigger and the spaces are wider. Now, a lot of people in the US mistakenly believe that just because the US is a larger country, that means that these places are for some reason obligated to build everything far apart from one another. And what that ends up doing is it creates a culture of car dependency. Now, we can go to the lobbying from the automotive companies and the oil companies as more of a root reason why this is the case, but the reason why people justify it in this day and age, especially to themselves and to Europeans, is because of the land area. Now, the Netherlands is built the way it is primarily out of necessity, because as I've stated throughout this video, the Netherlands is a small country by landmass. We all know this. It's a very small country. You can drive across the whole entire country in about 3 hours with no traffic. So obviously it has to have the buildings closer together. And not only that, but it was built before the advent of the automobile, with Rotterdam being the main exception to that rule. And the reason why it is the exception to that rule. And by the way, I've seen videos, walking tours of Rotterdam, and from what I can tell, although things do seem a little more spread out, it still seems very walkable, very bikeable, and still seems like a very pleasant place to be. In fact, that's actually the city that my girlfriend and I want to move to whenever we do settle down in the Netherlands. But anyways, the reason why Rotterdam is that way is because it was bombed in the war. The war happened after the advent of the automobile. So when they rebuilt the city, they decided to build it up to modernized standards, which we now know is not necessarily for the best. Now, I think in Rotterdam, again, it's not really that big of an issue because not only is it still walkable and bikeable, but you have public transit. In a place like Louisville, Texas, where I grew up, a place that has a population of around 130,000 people, give or take, you don't really have those options. You don't really have bike lanes, you don't really have public transit, so you pretty much have to have a car, or you have to be willing to pay $20 for an Uber to get across the city. And let alone going to Dallas, which is, 45 kilometers away. I mean, basically you're on your own. And this is one thing that I really appreciate about Europe, is that you don't have to live in a big city to have access to walkability and public transit. Obviously, that person was in Amsterdam, but even in Fassen, which if you're from the Netherlands, maybe you know where that's at. That's where my girlfriend and I spent our last month in the Netherlands. Fassen is a small town in Gelderland with, I think, 12,000 inhabitants. And the thought of renting a car never even crossed my mind when we were there, because we rented 2 bikes, 2 very nice bikes, by the way, and not even e-bikes, just regular push pedal bikes. And that was plenty sufficient to get from point A to point B, because the cities are designed that way, the towns are designed that way, and it's much more efficient. And it's also a big part of the reason why the obesity rates and the life expectancy are much more favorable in the Netherlands compared to the United States of America. Now, as another consequence of the Netherlands being a small country, there is, of course, a housing shortage. And something that I find really fascinating is it seems like there's a very big discrepancy in what some people are paying for their mortgage payments and or rent compared to other people. Now, if you feel comfortable with sharing this information, if you're Dutch watching this, then I'd love to know how much you're paying for your mortgage and or rent payment in the comments below, if you don't mind, because I just found out yesterday, and I hope I'm not overstepping my boundaries by saying this, but we'll just keep the person anonymous. Basically, my girlfriend's parents' friend is paying around $210 per month for their mortgage payment. And when I heard that, when I tell you I was this close to booking a flight, look, we're in Vietnam primarily because of the cost of living. I am paying, what is it, $382 a month for this apartment. Now, granted, it's a high-rise apartment. It's in a very nice location, very, very upscale, not just by Vietnamese standards, but by worldly standards, based on the places I've been to. So it's still a great deal. But, I mean, we're talking about $382 for a one-bedroom apartment versus $210 for what I assume is a 3-bedroom house. 3, maybe even 4-bedroom house. Now, I think that might be a bit of an anomaly, even by Dutch standards, because the neighborhood's not particularly old either. The neighborhood that that person lives in is not that old. So I don't see how that's even possible. That's why I'm asking for your mortgage payment, because I need more reference points, honestly. I'm asking for me, because I don't think that people are getting those kinds of mortgage payments in 2025 and beyond. I just don't think that that's really feasible because of the housing shortage. But then I also have to wonder if housing has not always been a bit of a constraint in the Netherlands, given how small it is. And of course, if you're from the Netherlands, then you'll know more about that. So enlighten me in the comments. And also another little fun fact that I found out about the Netherlands when I went there was that when you rent an apartment, so not buying a house, but when you rent an apartment, it oftentimes does not come with floors installed. So the way that you would rent an apartment in the US and the apartment would come with either hardwood, carpet, tile, or maybe a mix of all three, in the Netherlands, you're gonna basically get this industrial warehouse type floor, and then it's up to you to determine what kind of flooring you're gonna put on top of that. That right there is probably the best example of Dutch frugality that I have personally witnessed in my lifetime, and I don't think anything will ever top that. Now, as far as buildings go, another thing that I noticed when I was in the Netherlands is the McDonald's restaurants seem to be nicer than in the US. Now, my sample size is admittedly very small, but the McDonald's restaurants seem to be much more advanced. Now, I only went to one McDonald's in the Netherlands. It was this McDonald's in Utrecht. It seemed to be kind of in the city center area, so maybe you know which one I'm talking about. But I believe it had an upstairs as well. I've never seen that before. Literally never seen that in my life. McDonald's with multiple stories. But I also haven't been to McDonald's in the US since I was probably 13 or so. I'm 25 now. So it's been a very long time since I last went to a McDonald's in the US, so maybe I'm not the best person to compare the two. Maybe McDonald's just elevated their game across the board. But the last time I went to McDonald's, it wasn't really an upscale establishment. But I'm saying this to say that I can see why people in the Netherlands would want to actually dine in at McDonald's. It's because it looks like a pretty pleasant place to be. In fact, in some ways, it looks more technologically advanced, more upscale even, than some actual sit-down service restaurants that I've been to as well, not just in the Netherlands, but really around the world. So I guess that does make sense. What doesn't make sense is the last person saying that people in the Netherlands don't wake up before 8 a.m. That was literally the exact opposite of my experience. That was the exact opposite of my experience. In my experience, and again, maybe it's just a sample size issue, but from what I saw in my 14 months there, pretty much everyone woke up before 8 a.m. Everyone there seemed to be morning people. There were very few night owls like myself. Now, she said that the gyms typically don't open before 7. I don't know what gym she was going to. I went to Basic Fit. Basic Fit is 24 hours because they basically have a staffed period and an unstaffed period, but you don't need the staff to enter the gym. You just need your Basic Fit scanner code thing on your phone, and you scan the code and you enter. At least at all the Basic Fits that I've personally been to. So I don't know where in the Netherlands she is that that's the case, but every gym I've been to in the Netherlands, Basic Fit and Anytime Fitness, they were 24 hours. They were 24/7, and I really enjoyed going to the gym at midnight because, again, from what I saw, Dutch people are not night owls. They are morning birds by and large. And what this meant was that I pretty much got the whole entire gym to myself every single time.